evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the City Council meeting for June 23rd, 2014 to order. We'll begin this evening's meeting by the invocation by Bishop Thomas Halsey, followed by the pledge to our nation's flag, led by Councilwoman Williams.
Our Heavenly Father, we ask once again that you come in and give us clarity of mind, that you strengthen everyone here tonight. If there's any affliction in their bodies or any sickness, move it now in the name of Jesus. And, oh God, help us to carry out the mandate that our community may grow and that the membership of the community will come together and we be the best on this side of the river. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams and Bishop Halsey. We have before you this evening's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda this evening?
If there's no addition, I recommend we approve the agenda as presented. Second.
By Mr. Hutchison, seconded by Mr. Hare, to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Now we have before us the consent agenda. Those items on the agenda which are considered routine and non-controversial are marked with an asterisk and will be acted upon by a single roll call vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of council so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. What's the pleasure of council?
For acceptance. Second.
Moved by Mr. Hutchison, second by Mr. Anderson. Any questions on the motion? None, Madam Clerk. Sorry, Mr. Dixon. Second by Mr. Dixon. See no questions, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Perza?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams? Yes. Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonard?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 on the agenda this evening is the proclamation for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 Commemoration Day. I'd invite Ms. L. Hughes, Head of the Adult Services with Dover Public Library, Mr. Cecil Wilson, Chair of the Dover Human Relations Commission, and Mr. Calvin Christopher of the State Human Relations Commission to join me at the podium and request the City Clerk to read the proclamation.
Whereas the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was landmark legislation in the United States that outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And July 2nd, 2014 will mark the 50th anniversary of the signing of this historic act. And whereas the Dover Public Library was selected as one of a limited number of institutions nationwide to be awarded a Created Equal America's Civil Rights Struggle grant, which was offered through the Bridging Cultures initiative of the National Endowment for the Humanities through its partnership with the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. And whereas to commemorate the signing of the Civil Rights Act, the Dover Public Library, in partnership with the Dover Human Relations Commission and Delaware State University, will offer a series of documentaries recounting the stories of courageous individuals who challenge the social and legal status quo of deeply rooted institutions, from slavery to segregation to open doors of opportunity for Americans. The series will begin with a viewing of the Freedom Riders at the Schwartz Center on July 2nd, 2014 at 7 p.m., and 3 additional films will be offered at the Dover Public Library during the months of July, August, and September 2014, with all films to be followed by discussions with civil rights activists or scholars. Now, therefore, I, David L. Bonard, Vice Mayor of the City of Dover, Delaware, do hereby proclaim July 2nd, 2014 as Civil Rights Act of 1964 Commemoration Day, and encourage all residents to participate in the events being offered, educate themselves on the history of civil rights in the United States, and reflect on the ideals of freedom and equality that have helped to bridge cultural and racial division.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to give you these certificates. I know, Cecil, that you would like to say something, and I think that you would like to say something on behalf of the library. Did you have something? Go ahead. You go first.
To go first. Well, I just really want to encourage the public to come out on July 2nd. These committees have worked very hard to commemorate this important historic event, so please join us on the 2nd.
I just want to say a few words to the entire library staff and its director for promoting such a very strong commemoration of this Civil Rights Act. It is extremely important that we support this. You know, sometimes we elaborate on the past, but we forget about the future. And this city has a very strong future to continue to move ahead in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very briefly, thank you for inviting me here. As I heard yesterday, Rosa sat so Martin could march, so Obama could run, so we can fly. And the only way we're going to be flying is if we embrace, commemorate, and continue with this 50-year celebration and do what's right and what's just. So I certainly thank you all for inviting us down here and continuing with this commemoration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 on this evening's agenda is a public hearing, violation of dangerous building ordinance for property located at 238 North New Street, owned by John and Soledad Sullivan. I would request Mrs. Anne Marie Townsend, Director of Planning and Community Development, to brief us.
Thank you. Again, this is property located at 238 North New Street. In the way of history, we've had 29 code enforcement cases on this property since 2005. Interior and exterior violations, primarily exterior violations, junked cars, a lot of grass violations. Utilities were terminated 3 years ago, June 23rd, 2011. It was registered as vacant by the city in March 2012. It was condemned in June 2011 due to no active utilities, open code violations, unlocked doors, and people gaining entry to the property. So it was one that we have had to watch and make sure is secured on a regular basis. It's been a source of neighbor complaints from drug activities and prostitution. There is unpaid vacant building registration fees. We're bringing it forward as it is unfit for habitation. It's a general welfare issue. There are code violations, and it's an unoccupied building. And it's not clicking. There we go. Okay. I had asked the question to staff. I had thought it was a duplex, and perhaps it was at one point in time because there's a door on either side, but it is one single-family house. So you can see the door closest to the street is boarded. This is property from the back. Again, it is not being maintained. It's just continuing to deteriorate. We have not had response from the owner. You can see where the porch has some issues. The roof system. Some interior pictures. So in this case, the staff recommendation is to declare this building and any accessory structures on the property as dangerous, to order the property to be repaired or demolished by the owner by July 23rd. And if that does not happen, then to order staff to proceed with the demolition and the cost recovery as specified on the action form. So with that, I can take any questions you may have.
Any questions, Mrs. Townsend? Seeing none? Thank you, Mrs. Townsend. This does require a public hearing. I do declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of declaring this property dangerous? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone who would like to speak in favor of declaring the property dangerous? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against declaring this property dangerous? Anyone who would like to speak against it? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What's your pleasure of council?
Move to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hare, seconded by Mr. Hutchison. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 3B, a public hearing for the violation of dangerous building ordinance on property located at 640 Nimitz Road, owned by Deutsche Bank National Trust, care of Countrywide Home Loan. Mrs. Townsend.
Okay, this is a case where we've had a number of code enforcement, 19 cases since 2006. So the property before it became vacant was one of our problem properties. The utilities were terminated January a year ago. It was registered as vacant last summer. It was condemned by staff this past May due to a fire that occurred. It's been a source of neighbor complaints. I believe it's been, again, one of the houses that people get into for drugs and prostitution. There are fees owed in vacant building fees. We have had to pay to have a contractor secure the building, and there is over $3,000 in unpaid utilities. We're bringing it forward as it's got fire damage, it's unfit for habitation, general welfare, code violations, again, you'll see in the pictures, and it's an unoccupied building. Here's a picture, and again, this is what the neighbors at Nimitz Road have been looking at for the past 6 weeks. You know, it's boarded, and we've been making sure it stays that way, but, you know, there's still the debris from the fire. This is the rear. You can see, I mean, it's pretty much a total loss. And our fire marshal's office has been dealing with the insurance company, and they're just not being responsive. Interior, you can see where it's kind of beyond salvage. So in this case, we are requesting that council declare the building and any accessory structures on the property dangerous, to order the property to be repaired or demolished by June 23rd by the owner, and if not, to authorize staff to move forward with the demolition and cost recovery.
Thank you, Mrs. Townsend. For the record, that should reflect July 23rd, June 23rd.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Are there any questions of staff? Mrs. Williams.
Mrs. Townsend, has the bank not responded either?
They have not been responsive, no.
Where are they, in Germany?
I think they're based out of Germany, but they have offices in the United States.
But they don't return your calls? They don't?
They are one of the banks that has not been very responsive with our vacant buildings.
So you've had this history with them before?
I believe another house that was demolished several years ago was owned by Deutsche Bank.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin.
Can you just clarify the date that you had?
July 23rd.
I think it says July 23rd there, but I said June when I spoke, so.
I wasn't listening to what you said.
Pardon?
I wasn't listening to what you said.
Okay.
Mr. Persa.
Were the pictures that were reflected up there, are they within the last month? Is that what's currently
Yes.
there?
Yep.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing no further questions, this does require a public hearing. I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of declaring this property dangerous? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone who would like to speak in favor of declaring the property dangerous? Seeing none, anyone who would like to speak against declaring the property dangerous? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone who would like to speak against declaring the property dangerous? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. It's a pleasure, council. Mr. Persa.
I'd say the application should be application to support staff recommendation, declare 640 Nimitz Road, owned by Douche Bank, dangerous, and follow staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Persa, seconded by Mrs. Williams. Any questions on the motion? To accept staff recommendation. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Boner?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 5 on the agenda tonight is a revenue report update. Mr. Koenig.
Question.
Thank you. And tonight's packet is a 2-page report prepared by the Finance Department. On page 1 is the general fund. If you look to the bottom of the report, current year revenues are running at 96.9% of the original budget estimates. Revenues that are coming in stronger than we had originally anticipated include the transfer tax as well as building permits, permits and fees. Other than that, if there are any questions, I would have to answer that on the general fund. On the water and sewer fund, this fund is coming in slightly under where we anticipated being at 86.9% through the budget year. Mrs. Mitchell has been tracking those expenses as well as the revenue side. On the electric fund, year-to-date revenues are running $79,736,000, which is 96.1% of the budget. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Any questions of staff? Pleasure of council.
Move to accept the report.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hare, seconded by Mr. Dixon. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 6 on the agenda are the results of the 2014 special mayoral election. I would request the city clerk to report the results. Mrs. McBell.
The 2014 special mayoral election was held on Tuesday, June 17, 2014. The results, as certified by the election board, are as follows. Chevis R. Anderson, 101 votes. David L. Anderson, 534 votes. Robin R. Christensen, 658 votes. R. Jefferson Reed, 197 votes. James P. Webster, 188 votes. Total votes cast, 1,678. Total registered voters, 22,779.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's the pleasure of council?
Accept the report.
Moved by Mr. Hare, seconded by Mr. Slavin to accept the election results. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The results are accepted. Item number 7. There is an opposition to the Transportation Secretary's proposal to cut $1 million from municipal street aid. This has been announced in the budget hearings before the Joint Finance Committee. I would request that I be allowed to sign a letter as council president to voice our displeasure with removing $1 million from the transportation or municipal street aid fund. So with council's approval, I would request the authority to send that letter. What's the pleasure of council? Mr. Lynn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Lynn, seconded by Mr. Slavin. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Boner?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 8 is the final reading of proposed ordinance. First reading of the proposed ordinances was accomplished during the council meeting of June 9, 2014. Council, the proposed ordinance are available at the entrance to council chamber. First, I will entertain a motion to consider the final readings by title only, which is simply to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion will be necessary for its adoption. What's the pleasure of council?
So moved.
Second.
By Mrs. Williams, second by Mr. Anderson. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 8A, proposed ordinance 2014-16, amending Appendix E, Commercial and Industrial Building Redevelopment, sponsored by Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Townsend. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. This particular ordinance is continuing something that has been a crucial tool in our economic development, which is to allow a credit for impact fees and business license fees, building fees, permits. This has been able to get more business into the city. Businesses have expanded using these credits, including Kraft, including Redner's, which moved into the city, and as well as several other organizations, including some nonprofits which pay taxes on particular properties, ranging from the Inner City Cultural League to, I believe, Wesley College. It's been an important part in our economic development, and I believe that it needs to be extended because in these tight global economic times, we need the tools in our war chest to be able to help the people who are here building this community, our existing businesses, to reward them when they expand, and also new businesses that want to be part of our community. It's been successful. It's been recognized as such, and I believe that a 3-year extension has been merited. It's been beneficial to our revenue because we weren't making money before. Now we're actually getting some of these fees in. It looks like half of something that's worth a lot more than zero of nothing. And if Mrs. Townsend has anything to add, I yield to her.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other comments in regard to the issue? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of council?
Move adoption of the ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Slavin. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Berza?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have proposed ordinance 2014-17, the fiscal year 2014-15 City of Dover budget ordinances. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you, Council President. Before you is ordinance 2014-17. It's a 25-page ordinance that identifies the fiscal year 15 spending plan for the City of Dover. Roughly $136 million across all funds. This ordinance has been revised to reflect the budget hearing that was conducted between the last council meeting and the current council meeting, and includes on page 1 under the transfer from the electric fund of $10 million to the general fund, as was requested by council. On page 6, it includes an additional appropriation to the Parkland Reserve Fund for funds to be used for a future recreation facility. In addition to that $100,000, there is $80,000 in the capital plan related to a potential recreation facility that was identified during the budget process. As you move through the funding plan, that $100,000 required a $100,000 adjustment to the street program, as was indicated in the last budget meeting. So the street program for fiscal year 15 will be $900,000. As presented, there is no tax increase in the proposed budget. There will still be a $1.25 increase in the water customer charge, a $1.25 increase in the sewer customer charge, as well as a 45-cent increase in the groundwater infiltration charge. So that charge will go from $1.05 to $1.45 per 1,000 gallons on the monthly bill. In addition to that, there are no proposed changes to electric rates within the electric service territory for the City of Dover. If there are no other questions, prepared to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of council?
Move to accept the staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hare, seconded by Mr. Dixon, to accept the briefing and approve the budget for this next fiscal year. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
No.
Mrs. Williams?
No.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes, motion carries 6-3 to approve the budget for fiscal year 2014-2015. Next, the reconsideration of evaluation of bids for the Dover Park Recreational Center demolition. The item was considered during the regular council meeting of June 9th, 2014. Councilman Anderson asked that the item be placed on the agenda for consideration. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the reconsideration of the demolition of the Dover Park and Recreation Center recommended by staff, condition upon the issuance of a replacement architectural RFP for a replacement building be published by 31 December 2014, which shall contain basketball courts, and staff also be instructed to target July of 2015 for bids for a replacement facility.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dixon. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Lynn.
Just to clarify, my concern is that an RFP is not definite enough. Is there a commitment, and would the maker of the motion amend it so that there's a commitment that ground be broken in calendar year 2015?
I have no issue with that. The motion does include that bids be put out in July of 2015, which includes the next budget cycle to give us 2 budget cycles to adjust to it, as well as time for a study. But if you think a groundbreaking needs to be added, I'm open to that.
I would ask that the maker of the motion add a groundbreaking.
A groundbreaking sometime in 2015.
That would be fine. Thank you.
Anybody object?
Seconder is okay with that?
Second.
Okay.
All right, first Mr. Koenig, then Mr. Persa. I think Mr. Koenig has a point of clarification.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. Are you approving the bid?
Yes.
And we can move forward with the bid results prior to that RFP going out, because the bids will expire.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. It's just conditioned that the RFP be done by that time.
Okay.
And the reason why I gave that much time is that hoping by the end of September, the needs assessment will have some preliminary reports. And this is at the end of the year, so it's to give staff enough time to react and respond.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Koenig, Mr. Persa. Speak into your mic, sir.
I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves. The needs assessment, which is being conducted in order to determine what should be used to improve that park, as well as all the other parks in the city, we're still 6 months away from completing that. We could get a result back that doesn't justify spending funds on a building out at that place. If we're moving forward by determining we're putting out RFPs and groundbreakings ahead of public comment, ahead of the results of that study, allowing the public to comment on that, and allowing whether it's a good use of resources, I think we're basically depriving the city of the entire function of taking public comment for purposes of doing that. We spent 6 to 9 months worth of time meeting with engineers and contractors, environmental specialists, and staffing from the Parks Department and the Planning Department for the sole purpose of just determining whether the building that's presently there is worth salvaging. And the answer to the question is yes, you can salvage it if resources are no limit. If we want to spend $300,000 just to rehabilitate the building before we even decide what to do with it, we can do that. But the committee on, I think, 3 different occasions unanimously determined that that is not a wise use of resources. So the specific question that was addressed by that committee, which the Parks Committee, was spending money rehabilitating that present building is not smart use of taxpayer dollars, and that's why it's been rejected 3 times. So the council finally approved the removal of that building, getting us to the point of determining what we need to do next. We cannot determine what to do next because we have no input yet from the public or from the survey that our planning department has been spending at least the last 6 months on. We're still 6 months short on. So if we make a decision tonight without getting that input, there's really no point in having our planning department work on that, and we are already tight-staffed as it is. We might as well terminate that study and let reallocate our resources to other uses at this point. So my concern is we're getting confused between the purposes of what we're talking about here. The question is, are we removing the building and how much money are we spending on it? The answer to are we removing it's already been decided by the city. How much we want to spend on it, I want to spend the least amount of money possible, which was the point of the application to the staff's recommendation to spend the $30,000 removing it. That's the question we have here. What we do to replace it with is a question that comes up later on at a different time after we get input from the public to do that. We haven't done that, and if we go forward with this, we're basically making this a situation where the city knows better than the public, and we haven't taken the time to solicit that comments. So those are my comments on what we do on this, and you can do what you want.
Thank you, Mr. Perzer. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Slavin, then Mr. Anderson.
I think at this time it would be good to have to revisit the past of what happened when the council refused to listen to the public about Shutty Park. Half the council was not reelected because they did not want to take it to referendum. They did not want to follow the referendum. They did not want the people to speak. I agree completely with Mr. Perza. We have to get input.
Thank you very much. Mr. Slavin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm a little confused as to what the path forward is on a replacement building out at Dover Park. So what I've heard is that the needs assessment would continue and would be done sometime at the end of this calendar year. Right? That we would have the needs at that point. Is that correct?
My understanding is it's October, November is when that report is supposed to come back.
We're hoping.
So
that's what we're shooting for.
We're about 6 months from getting the answers to what the public wants out at that place.
But then I heard in the motion that Mr. Anderson made that the solution would include basketball courts. And I thought that the purpose of the needs assessment was to determine what functions would be placed on the site. Then I think what I'm hearing is we're going to go out to an RFP for architectural engineering design fees for a design, and that will take us to construction documents, right? We're hopeful to do that in a 6-month period. Is that correct? Because we want to break ground sometime in December. And you wanted to start the A&E, the architectural engineering, in July, and then begin the groundbreaking in December of 2015. Is that correct?
Hopeful.
Okay, it's a highly compressed schedule for that kind of project, highly compressed. And my concern is that while I appreciate all the work that's been done, is once that building is demolished out there, the urgency of creating a solution on the east side for recreation needs of the kids goes away. Okay, we've seen this happen before, and if you want an example, you can walk down Lockerman Street where the Capitol Office Supply was, and someone at the time said, please don't issue a demolition permit for the new hotel to go up until the building permit is issued for the new hotel. Otherwise, you'll end up with a hole in the ground in your downtown area. It's been close to 15 years later, and we have that vacant lot down there, which we've now redeveloped into something pleasant, but that was the outcome. So we're going to lose our urgency if we knock down that building and leave a platform of concrete there. I just think we're going to lose the ability to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Mr. Anderson?
I think the points raised are valid. However, when I look through the minutes, it appears there's been a number of public hearings, and I saw public hearings in October, and the public comments in November, in February, and other times, and the public keeps saying that they want a facility there. It hasn't been even, I mean, almost everyone who's commented has commented they want a facility. They oppose the demolition of this one, but there's been an acquiescence to the reality that this facility no longer is useful in its current condition. It has effectively been demolished already. The skepticism of the public is the one that Mr. Slavin has said, and I agree with Mr. Hare. We need to look at pole buildings, things that fit within our budget that are inexpensive but effective, because the young people out there aren't about grand designs and multi-million-dollar buildings. It's about adequate facilities that continue regardless of the weather and are year-round, and a year-round commitment to recreation continuing. And if anyone has any amendments, very open to that. It's not a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Hare, then Mr. Lynn.
Yes.
And Mr. Slavin.
Having that building up, maybe Mr. Townsend can, what's it cost us? It costs us money to have that building standing, right?
Right now, it's not costing us money to have it standing because the alarm system is out. There's no utilities associated with it. So there's no out-of-pocket cost.
Other than the police just driving by every now and then.
Right.
Okay. And everybody's saying they this, that. I went over there and talked to some of the residents around there. And the ones I spoke to, they want something there. But they want that one gone, because they say they can't go out in the evening after a certain time because of the people that are over there. They say that attracts an element that is just not conducive to that, what they like to see in their neighborhood. But they do want something, and I have no problem. They said, yeah, they would love to see a basketball court, like a building, indoor basketball court. They also mentioned it'd be neat to have a skate park, because a lot of the kids like a skate park over there. So, as I think Mr. Anderson just said, the building in essence is gone. Whether that building is standing or not standing isn't going to change anybody's opinion on whether we should do something there. Either you want to do something there, or you don't want to do something there. But the people over there would like something there, but they also want that building gone because of the element that it attracts. So, like I say, the building is basically gone one way or the other, and I think it should go down right now, because I think then it's even going to promote a lot quicker to get something done. I agree with what Mr. Perza said about the study, but I don't know that we need to study it to death for a year. I mean, we know something needs to go in there. We know what people want, at least people I've talked to, I know what they want. I think we just need to get the building down. I don't think we need to wait till December to send out an RFP. Get the building down, put an RFP out there. We've got till June of 2016. Isn't that when the 15 budget ends?
15.
No, the budget we're in,
June of
2015. I think we can put the RFP. I don't know if we need to have groundbreaking by then, but I think we can get the RFP out within the next 6 months. And let's see what comes back. but I think the building needs to go down.
Mr. Lynn, then Mr. Slavin.
I believe that the fact that we're having this conversation is a testament that the impetus for any movement in Dover Park is the continued existence of that building. So I will not be voting to support any move that would tear down the building without concrete plans to do something else at Dover Park. The children on the east side of Dover are in need of recreational activities. It is unconscionable to believe that they should cross Route 13 on their bicycles or by foot to get to Schutte Park. I believe that that puts the youth on the east side of Dover in danger, and I can't support that. If we were to make a firm commitment to building a new facility or providing other recreational facilities for the east side of Dover, as per the motion suggested by Mr. Anderson, that is something I could get behind, but I think that the points raised by Mr. Slavin were salient. I don't see any hurry to demolish the building. The mere fact that the building continues to exist means that it continues to exist on our radar and will continue to spur this type of discussion. I'm also concerned about the manpower element in the planning office, where we can't even get a firm date of October to get the needs assessment back. The hesitation, and I know you're overworked, Marie, this is nothing against you, the hesitation with which those questions were answered gives me some concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Mr. Slavin, then Mr. Perza.
My questions have to do with funding of this. How much funding will we have after the demolition for the design, for the A&E fees that the RFP would?
The demolition budget is a separate project, so there'll be $80,000 in the fiscal 15. There is $80,000 in the fiscal 15 budget under the capital plan, and then there's the 100 in the Parkland Reserve. So there's $180,000 in the FY15 budget associated with a new facility.
We're doing this a little bit backwards, but if of that 180, how much is going to go toward A&E fees?
It depends on the size of the facility, to be honest. My answer is I don't know, because we haven't
about
identified.
6 to 7 times what you're going to pay on A&E fees is a good estimate of what your construction cost is going to be. And what I worry about is we may have $180,000. It's not going to build you a building. And so you're going to have to come back here for another appropriation, either in mid-fiscal year for the building of that, or it's going to have to be loaded up in next year's budget. And based on the fun that we had in the last 6 weeks of getting a budget through with new expenses, I don't know how much of an appetite there's going to be for that.
Mrs. Townsend, for clarification purposes.
I want to kind of go back to something Mr. Slavin said about the schedule of things. And, just looking at the motion, if we did put an RFP out in late December, we probably wouldn't even have proposals to bring before council to award a contract until sometime in February. By the time that architect does their work and you start going through the process, there's no way you're breaking ground. And if we don't even have an RFP.
Well, more to the point, you won't even have a placeholder number for the building of the budget.
Right. But I guess I wanted to make it clear that it's just about impossible to do something where we actually go to construction in 2015.
I appreciate that.
So I wanted to make that clear. But the other point that I did want to make, and because we've talked about adding costs to the budget, is that if we build a facility, it's not just the capital cost, it's the operational cost as well. And the one thing I can tell you is that from experience, we don't have staff to effectively and safely run 2 facilities. That was one of the reasons that it was important to put the staff in one facility, because it's not safe to have a rec center staffed by one person. And that's where we were many times when we had 2 locations and a staff of 5. So as we discuss what goes there and how we pay the capital cost, we also need to have the discussion of the impact that has on the operating budget, because you can't do it with just the 5 people that we have.
Thank you, Mrs. Townsend. Mr. Persa, then Mr. Hutchison, then Mr. Hare.
I guess I just reinforce that the procedures we have are important. They address all of these concerns, whether they're staffing.
Microphone.
The procedures the city has in place, am I good? Are designed to accommodate all these issues, whether it's the staffing needs, where the dollars and the money is going to come from these projects. We're realistically probably 2 years out for construction on anything at this point because of the time it takes to determine what you have to build out there, how you're going to build it, how you're going to staff it, how you're going to insure it. All of these issues take time, which is why we review them. You just don't, on a whim, decide we're going to build a building and do it. And by going outside of the process and basically amending it and modifying what we're going to do to get a result, we're locking ourselves into unknown consequences. I guess my final comment is just on, I guess, regarding the unconscionability of making your way from one end of the city to another end of the city. Is my end of town, I represent South Dover, so I've got neighborhoods like Woodbrook, Mayfair, Crossgates. My neighborhoods that I represent don't have any of these facilities. We don't have buildings, we have basketball courts, we have soccer fields, we have softball fields or baseball fields. I don't think it's unconscionable that you can play on your parks. Nowhere does it require you to have a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 building in order to be accepted as a park in the city. For whatever reasons, 10, 15 years ago, the city built Shitty Park, and that became the central park for the city. But the neighborhoods within the city still have their own parks, and it doesn't require a park building to be able to enjoy and play out in public. White Oak Park is a park. Right now, it effectively doesn't have a building, but it doesn't need a building necessary to enjoy the park. You can still go out there and play and enjoy what's being outside in nature and playing with kids and things like that. It doesn't require getting on a bus. It doesn't require getting on a bike and riding 3 miles across town. I would agree with that. But for whatever reasons, the city committed to doing one central facility to have their mega park. But each little community in Dover doesn't have that access to those type of resources. And I think if we get into putting mini parks all over the city, we've got to make sure that we can staff it and support those type of facilities. So from my perspective and the people on my side of town, I don't think it's unbelievable to have a park that doesn't have a building in it and it's still being acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Person. Mr. Hutchison, then Mr. Hare, then Mrs. Williams.
Anne Marie, what are we spending a year now for recreation in the city of Dover?
The operating budget is just over $600,000.
Okay, $600,000. I think it's critical, part of this study, and the focus is to sit down with the schools, the YMCA, the churches, the Boys and Girls Club, and get a total consensus of what's taking place in the city. There's other options other than building a building. We may end up, when we built Shitty Park was for the whole city, not just a part of it. And there's nothing, I don't know, has the city ever considered busing? But there's other alternatives, and before I'm going to support making a financial commitment to building another building, the building that's out there needs to come down. If it doesn't, so it stands up. But as far as building a future building without having a study, without having a comprehensive understanding what the needs are, this council would be absolutely wrong to make any decisions without that knowledge. And I got news for you. This is not the federal government. This is the city government. We need to start acting like it. And spending money you don't have.
Mr. Hare, then Mrs. Williams.
A lot of good points made. I will just say two things. One, as Mrs. Townsend said, we're 2 years away before we could even have a building. So why don't we have all the programs that we have at Shitty Park, continue to make them available to everybody in the city, and if it's a program that starts at 6 o'clock on Saturday, or 6 o'clock on whatever, or 8 o'clock Saturday morning, we'll have a bus at White Oak Park to pick up all the people that want to play in it for the next, participate, and let's keep track of all the records. And we'll bus them over there. We'll take them over there so they don't have that safety issue. I mean, but people like Mr. Purtis saying they have just as tough a time getting to Shooty Park. Second thing, if you want to leave the building up, fine. I will vote to leave the building up. And when it does come time to tear it down, whatever the expense is over the $35,600, it comes out of council's salary and budget. So if it's an additional $15,000 to tear the building down a year, year and a half, 2 years from now, then city councilmen will pay $1,500 or whatever it is a piece additional.
Is that in form of an amendment?
You have to have a second.
Put their money where their mouth is.
Mr. Harry, do you want to make that in form of an amendment?
If Mr. Anderson added, I'll second.
No.
See there? When it comes time to put up, everybody's blah, 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 blah.
But I'm with you on tearing the building down, so.
It's going to cost more money to tear the building down in 2 years. So you're willing to let it stand? I'll stand. I'll put up the money. Everybody put up their share if it's over $35,600.
No, you put enough, the rest of us are considered.
Thank you, Mr. Hare, Mrs. Williams. And then Mr. Dixon.
With the program. Hold on. I've got the
Order.
Hold on. I am so tired of hearing about doing stuff in the future. Right now, the City of Dover, in conjunction with Aid in Dover, the organization that I run, has got a program that's been operational for the last year. It provides basketball for kids who are at risk, and so it's an awful lot of the kids from the east side as well as the west. It's all over town. It's the inner city, all over town. We bus all those kids in. The kids don't mind it because they want to play basketball. They don't mind it because they want to play basketball when it's not raining and it's not cold and it's not terribly hot. So let's not talk about what's going to happen if we don't do this, if we do it. We are providing that service right now. Can it be expanded? Certainly. But it cannot be expanded without us planning for the purchase, and more importantly, Mrs. Townsend could not be more right. The operational cost will be, they will eclipse your building costs in the first 5 years by at least double or triple. And that's in the first 5 years. Finally, if you want to leave that building up, then you are going to be sponsoring recreation. It's called buying and selling drugs, because that's what's happening back behind that building now.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mr. Dixon.
I agree with you, Ms. Williams. The only thing about my problem is with the program that the city has for the parks and recs, we have a fee for any program.
Not this one, not ours.
City of Dover, talking about City of Dover, have a fee for any program that goes in parks and recs. Parents over there don't have $20 per child to come learn how to play baseball. They learn playing baseball probably with stickballs, we used to call it. So they don't have instructions on how to hold a bat. But they go out there and play in the field with a bat and ball. Now, I'm not saying that we need to consider the building being torn down, but still, the way our city is built, we need another facility. Because no way where you put it, even if you put transportation, the kids gonna miss the transportation. You gotta come up with some other type of way of paying for fuel and gas and oil and a driver to take care of all that during the day, especially during the summer. So they have nothing to do with it but get in trouble. So we gotta think about all of these things here, because, like I said, we charge our parents in the city a fee for them to get in programs. Even the YMCA charge a fee for them to get in the program. So we gotta look at it a different way.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Any other comments? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I I think we've been able to start a very positive discussion. And I think the discussion is the fact that there has been a forgotten part of the city. And I believe that, this is very positive. But I am open to amending the, well, of course, the language used was targeted, which didn't mean any obligation, but if those targets couldn't be met, then staff would have to bring that back and establish new dates. But if it makes staff more comfortable, if Mr. Lynn doesn't mind, of course he offered an amendment, but if he doesn't mind, I would like to change that to end of 2016.
So I would amend that, yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it's been amended to reflect by the end of calendar year 16. Is that correct? Is that my understanding of the motion?
And that's it, sorry.
Mr. Slavin.
Can the entire motion be restated?
I think it would be best, Mr. Anderson, if you withdrew your motion and the second and restated your motion. That would be the easiest way to do it.
To restate it as
So
amended?
I would withdraw the motion and make a new motion with the intent that you want to be included in the motion.
Yeah.
So if the maker and the seconder will withdraw the initial motion, then you restate your motion so it'll be clear.
Do you want to do you second?
I think I seconded it, but I would withdraw my second to allow Mr.
Thank you,
Anderson to remake the
Councilman.
motion.
Mr. Dixon, you withdraw your original second. The original motion is withdrawn.
All right.
Mr. Anderson, you're free to...
There are no motions or...
There are no motions on the floor at the present time. Mr. Anderson.
Mr. President, I move reconsideration of the staff recommendation to demolish the Dover Park and Recreation Center to allow the bid to be accepted, conditioned upon the issuance of a replacement RFP for a replacement building to be published by 31st of December 2014. Staff shall be instructed to target bids in 2015 budget year. With do we still need with a goal for a groundbreaking and by the end of 2016.
Is the motion clear? Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lynn. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Purser.
I think we should split the question into two pieces, one for demolition, one for new construction.
Second. Is that, oh, I'm sorry, is that a motion?
Is that a motion for an amendment?
Well, you can have a second motion.
Well, I don't think I can amend his motion at this point. I don't think
You can ask for an amendment.
I'm asking to sever the question.
Of the question.
I think that it is appropriate to make a motion to amend from the floor if you have a seconder.
Then I would motion to amend Mr. Anderson's motion into two motions, the first one being the demolition question that staff produced, the second one being the new construction plan for reconstruction of the building in 2016.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Yes, I second that motion.
Mrs. Williams.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
I believe that Mr. Purza's motion is procedurally improper.
I'm advised by the city solicitor they can amend from the floor at any time with any motion before the motion is voted on.
I would just remind the city solicitor that this is a motion for reconsideration. So effectively allowing Mr. Purza to amend the motion is effectively allowing him to go beyond the scope of the motion for reconsideration. He voted on the failing side of the original motion for reconsideration. Accordingly, he can't be in a position to go forward on a motion for reconsideration because it wasn't successful. He wasn't the prevailing party. So allow him to amend the motion effectively allows him to revisit the motion for consideration, which he doesn't have standing to do. So I would say that it would be procedurally improper.
I object.
Objection overruled. We're going to vote on the, the chair will make a ruling on this. What we will do is we will vote on Mr. Anderson's original motion with the second by Mr. Lynn. Then we'll have an opportunity to make a secondary motion from the floor that in effect will allow the procedure to move forward. Any objections to that?
What are we doing?
Would there be a point?
What are we doing?
Wouldn't the amendment have to go first? Can't amend it after it passes.
City clerk is checking her book.
Can't amend it after it passes or fails.
Jerking this thing around. You know what? One more jerk around. You got my support for a new motion. Keep jerking around. It's going to lose.
All right, the chair is going to rule that we will vote on the original motion, and then we'll proceed from that point forward. Are there any other questions on the motion? Mr. Hare, Mrs. Williams.
For Mrs. Townsend, is that time frame to have a groundbreaking before whatever the thing, basically 2 years from now?
2.5 years.
The 2.5 years, I think, is an acceptable time frame, provided that funding is available for the construction of the building. I mean, at this point, it's not funded. So from a timing standpoint, in terms of getting all of the pieces together on our end, absolutely.
So what we're saying then is, in this motion, is that we put out an RFP, and the RFPs all come back, and all the RFPs, the cheapest RFP says it's going to cost $2.5 million to put a building over there, then we got to do it.
No.
You got to break ground. So that we can have a groundbreaking.
Mr. Anderson, go ahead.
Well, obviously, the council would have to, one, take the bids, 2, accept the designs, 3, accept the bids, then approve it. I mean, it would just be the beginning of a process. That's why it's targeted dates. Any time during that time frame, if it proved to be not the direction we wanted to go, council would have the ability not to fund it, in which case it would redirect it. Council could make a motion to redirect this. In other words, council's still in charge of this. The council cannot direct council to do something. What all this does is it gives staff the framework with the intent of council. The intent of council being what is stated. If it is up to us then to fund it, to find ways to fund it if we get the RFPs back and they're acceptable to us.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mrs. Williams, then Mr. Slavin.
Thank you. This is to the council president. By the ruling of, we are going back to the first motion. The first motion was the motion that's on the agenda?
No, it's amended.
First motion first motion would be reconsideration. That would be the first motion you would have to pass. Then the second portion of that.
Reconsideration for what?
Reconsideration of the, Tracy, read that back.
Because I'm not quite sure what the ruling is.
What you're reconsidering is, at the last meeting, the recommendation of awarding the demolition contract to Delaware Mulch and Stone in the amount of $35,600 was defeated.
Right.
And Mr. Anderson has asked that it be brought back for reconsideration.
And that's all we're voting for at this present time?
At this juncture, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
So you, Mr. President, so you effectively ruled to divide the question?
You can make a motion, you can bring a second motion up after we vote on this one. All right. Mr. Lynn?
I think Ms. McDowell was tapping you on the shoulder because I don't think that's an accurate recitation of the procedural posture of the question.
I think the answer to her question is we're voting whether or not to re-vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we're not re-voting. We're just voting on whether or not to revert to decide to take a new vote.
That's correct.
Okay.
I don't think that's accurate.
It was placed on
No?
the agenda as a reconsideration. Prior notice was given, so it's on here for reconsideration. And now the vote should be on what's done.
Mr. Lynn?
Just as a matter of procedure, only Mr. Anderson, Mr. Dixon, myself, Mr. Slavin, or Mr. Council President Bonar can make the motion for reconsideration to begin with, just as a matter of course, because we were a member of the prevailing party at the last meeting. Accordingly, Mr. Anderson's motion was to reconsider the awarding of the contract to Delaware Mulch and Stone in the amount of $35,600, conditioned upon a set of factors. So only Mr. Anderson can pose that question, or Mr. Dixon, or myself, or Mr. Slavin, or Council President Bono. We're the only ones that can make a motion to reconsider. No one else has procedural standing to even make a motion for reconsideration. So I believe that the question that would be discussed is Mr. Anderson's motion to reconsider, coupled with his stipulations.
Mr. Perza?
Gotta follow procedures.
It's all about the procedure. Mrs.
Yeah.
Williams and Mr. Slavin.
I believe you got an opinion from the solicitor. Did you not?
Yes, sir.
And the solicitor's opinion is?
No, I agree with the interpretation.
Whose
Which one?
interpretation?
Which one? With the interpretation for the motion to reconsider and to vote on that.
Reconsider what?
Mr. Slavin?
Wait a minute.
Hold on a minute. Go ahead.
I need to know what I'm voting on.
Okay.
You're going to be voting on a motion to reconsider.
Reconsider what?
Reconsider the adoption, or I'm sorry, the awarding of the demolition of contract by Delaware Mulch and Stone to the amount of $35,600.
End of
Mr.
sentence.
Slavin.
Thank you.
And hopefully my safety is not in question here. I was going to ask for a 5-minute recess.
Granted. We're in recess.
Is that, you guys have blown through the procedure on everything. We have a procedure to determine what to do, and you guys are skipping it. You are. We haven't even had the public hearing for what to do. You guys have skipped over that and moved to the spending the money.
There will be more public hearings after this.
One of you.
If he doesn't agree to the second question, I apologize. He doesn't, he needs to withdraw.
Well, I was just so happy to see the team there. I mean, y'all enjoying yourselves. So, anyway, come to that. I won't invite you. I saw the building. Here's what happened. That's just what happened. When I saw her turn her back, I said, oh my, what happened here? So, two cops. Anyway, I'm in agreement with that. I'm in agreement with that money being coming out of small pockets.
In February.
It should come out. Well, I think it should. I didn't see it make it. Hey, Ralph. Did you hear it make it? I told him. Consider it. But you know what?
Basically discussing.
I did, he's quick. But my mom, 6 years old.
You can't guarantee you. You have to settle down. Okay. They've got pre-construction costs that are going to be estimated. They have got construction costs. And they've got the operation.
I don't think so.
We don't have the money. That's what we budgeted.
Three separate motions.
It's not.
There's not been many police calls engendered by that condition. But here's what's going to happen. It's going to be yes, no, no.
I have a question. This is a procedure. Oh, by the way, I need to know that I sent an information about which bank, based on the motion on the pronunciation. However, well, here's the thing, though. That's right or wrong. You said I understand people can't tell it, but there's no all problems. There's no way to articulate. It's not downtown's not the only problem, right?
Yeah, that's
We need to do something over there. I told Emery to not put up a steel.
There you go. Get me a CDL.
The pre-construction.
Why don't you just take down her fence?
Tell her she doesn't have to have it.
Construction
How much do you think a steel fence costs?
Well, they have to have blowtorch to get through it.
They get through.
Did you ask him about cameras?
Yeah, he said no.
You know, the problem is one person will want the camera and 5 others.
Don't tell them it's going on.
Right. Well, we'd have to get money. The question is, would they even be able to be tied in?
I mean, I'm not against cameras. Actually, that was you could get one that was just like good. We could put them in problems.
I mean,
You want to tear the fence down?
Except for Deutsch.
It's getting torn down.
Doucher.
who does?
Or douchebag. She wants a privacy fence.
Which fence are you talking about?
Maybe on the end.
Right. Right. Well, she's not getting written up anymore. I just have staff mad at me because I won't let them write her up.
Put up a brick wall.
Because then we'll own it. You have to go out and repaint it every 2 weeks. So it'll get painted every week.
I think they'd rather see the graffiti on it.
Really?
Can't you assign that as community service to some?
Have you seen some of the graffiti that's
My kids always laughed at that.
Oh, did you cut the deal? Thank you.
6 months, 8 months, costs another $5,000.
You guys can go. You won't get your get any cars. Video.
So Timmy's ready to be down from the police department now. No. No. We're getting an old box truck from them. Donna had a fit. But then I showed Donna all the things we're going to get rid of. I mean, we've got all these vehicles that Timmy's going to get rid of now because that can serve the purpose of, she was worried about us keeping it in our inventory just because it's available. So what I told her is that we're going to get rid of like 3 other.
Year life, so we got to write 48 years off.
No, we're getting rid of like 3 other things. And she was happy.
I think that's actually the way it was done, but I can't prove it. I wasn't there.
I love it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute, David. No groundbreaking. You got to quit leveraging this. Quit leveraging it. Play it honestly and get an honest. You're going to get right back what you get.
All right, everybody take your seats, please.
I know you're right.
There's this close to that, I support that.
Well, I hope they already have.
We'll see what everybody's
All right, we're back in session. Mr. Anderson?
Let's move on to reconsideration.
For a second.
For what?
Reconsider.
This is just.
This is strictly on the recommending of the awarding of the reconsideration of the demolition contract to Delaware Mulch and Stone in the amount of $35,600.
I'll second for the purposes of getting it on the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Mr. Slavin.
All right, so what I've been able to kind of put together here, I don't know if it'll work or not, but in the interest of compromise and a solution to a key issue for us on the east side, the first part of this would be to agree to the demolition of the building in the interest of public safety. I do believe, as much as I want to keep the building up, and I said that earlier, that the longer it is up, the more it's going to become a problem for us as public safety. A second component then would be to make another motion after the first one to allow for the RFP process to be out on the street in December and completed by May of 2015, so that we would have a budget estimate number for whatever that solution is that architect comes up with in that design process.
And the third portion.
And the third portion of it is that we have $180,000 right now dedicated to this solution. We're going to back out of that whatever we pay an architect for design, which is probably going to be somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. And that if the next sitting council that adopts the next budget says that solution for Dover Park is too expensive, the balance of those funds is dedicated to Dover Park and a recreation solution at Dover Park, whether that be programmatic or capital.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slavin. I think those are 3 separate motions we need to make. We do have a motion on the floor. You need to withdraw your motion.
No, I can't. First, we need to vote on reconsideration, which allows the...
Go ahead.
Which
All
is
right.
the first motion.
Motion to reconsider. All right.
Call the question.
Any further? Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I don't know what we're voting on.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
No.
Mr. Persa?
What are we voting on?
Voting on
Yes.
demolition.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, motion carries 8-1. Next motion, Mr. Slavin.
I hereby move that the city let out an RFP, a request for proposal for architectural design services for the Dover Park replacement building, that these design services would not commence before the survey is complete so that we know what the needs assessment are, but that we would need a budget estimate on the solution by May 1st of 2015.
Second on the motion?
Second.
Mr. Dixon, second. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Slavin, may we make it note in the minutes that we expect this survey to be done by October?
Oh, I think it's noted in these minutes and minutes of
Can
probably half a dozen others.
can I interject? Because the direction given to us was by the end of the year. So October and December are a few months apart. So I'm a little concerned that now the timeline's jumped up.
I think if the survey was done, the needs assessment was done by December, the architect could then be hired and picked up, and you would have an estimate.
Yeah. Mr. Persa.
To Ms. Townsend, does this then revise the scope of what the assessment is doing? Instead of it trying to determine what we need to do, it's what we want to do. We want a building, design us a building. So are we changing the scope of our interviews now and meeting with the public?
I think that the needs assessment is still going to be the needs assessment because we have not done a citywide recreation needs assessment in a very long time, at least since the 90s. So it will still be a citywide needs assessment, but we will have very specific targeted pieces about how to deal with Dover Park.
Okay.
And specifically the building needs.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. Mrs. Williams?
So is that a yes?
Yes.
You're sure?
Yes. It needs to stay, it needs to still be a citywide needs assessment.
Yes, we haven't had one, and other parts of the city also need to put in what they feel for their parts.
Thank you. Everybody clear on the motion? Just to make sure we are. Mr. Slavin, would you restate your motion? Just to make sure that the wording is right. So that this is...
I don't know that I remember what I said.
Come close.
That's the way compromises are.
We agreed that the city, I moved that the city would let out a request for proposals for architectural design services for a replacement building at Dover Park, and that would commence after the citywide needs assessment is complete, and would have a budget estimate by May 1st of 2015 on a replacement building.
Thank you. And any questions, Mrs. Williams?
So Mr. Slavin's motion is regardless of what the needs assessment is for the east side or for other parts of the city, that we are going to spend the money on the architectural?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Very clear on the motion.
Yeah, and let me clarify further. If that needs assessment were to come back and say the need isn't for a replacement building, it's for other amenities in that park, that's what would drive that.
That's what the third motion. All right. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
No.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes. Motion carries 7-2. Third motion, Mr. Slavin.
Thank you. I hereby move that the total amount of funds that are currently allocated for this Dover Park solution to be $180,000. First, let me confirm that that's the number that we have available. $180,000. That from those fees we will pay the architectural design fees, and the balance of those funds will be dedicated to improvements at Dover Park, whether they be program or capital improvements, regardless if the next council chooses to accept the recommendations of the architect.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lynn. Mrs. Townsend.
I would just state that the $100,000 has been put into Parkland Reserve, so that can only be used for capital, and the $80,000 is in the capital plan, so it couldn't be used for programming unless it was moved by motion by council.
We'll adhere to those
restrictions.
All right. Any questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Still no.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
No.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
No.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes, motion carries 6-3. All right. We're down to the end. Any council members' announcements? There are two things that the chair would like to do this evening. First of all, we have two members of council who are somewhat more challenged than the rest of us. One is Councilman Hutchison, who celebrated his birthday last Friday on June 20th. Hutch, happy birthday to you from all of us on council. And Bill Hare, you have a birthday coming up on Sunday, July 6th, from all of us. You happy birthday. And Mrs. Williams, would you like to add anything?
I would like to say to my colleagues to my right, you guys are so old.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Also, don't forget the African American Festival this weekend coming up, and Mr. Perza.
We're still on number 9. On number 9, did any of those motions include removing that building?
Yes, the first one.
Yes, the first.
That was the first one we did?
That's correct.
Okay.
You voted for it.
This is
When you voted yes.
Mrs. Townsend.
Can I add an announcement? On,
Council member announcement.
Councilman.
I know, but it's something that needs to get out in public domain.
To be more prompt.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. President, I'd like the floor for an announcement. I'd like to yield to Mrs. Townsend.
Why, thank you, sir.
You don't know what you've read. You don't realize what you've done.
I don't, but she'll
So I
only
only
want
have
some.
6 hours, right? Now, this Thursday, June 26th, from 4 to 7 in the Dover Public Library, we will be holding a public workshop on the bicycle and pedestrian plan currently underway as a joint effort of the Dover-Kent County MPO and the City of Dover. I will say the Dover-Kent County MPO is doing all the work, but we encourage you to come and see what we've been talking about and get your input in.
Thank you, Mrs. Townsend. Any other further comments?
Mr. Perza.
Mr. Perza.
I guess on behalf of the city, I would like to extend some appreciation to the Norfolk Southern Railroad. They held a public whistle-stop train ride today from Harrington up to Newark, invited the public to join the train ride from various points. The purpose of it was to address public safety and common sense, what you do around railroad tracks and on trains in general. I thought it was a very informative, well-put-together program. They put on a nice lunch for everybody that was invited, and it was an enjoyable time. Public officials from Harrington, Seaford, and some of the other municipalities around the county were in attendance, so I thought it was a very well-done program, and I think Norfolk Southern Railroad did a nice job. For Dover, that effectively means the railroad tracks that run along New Burton Road north out of the city is what that the scope of the railroad program entailed. So it came up from Harrington, stopped at the old Dover Railroad Station right on Lockerman Street, just like they did 100 years ago. It was a neat program.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Slavin.
I don't know, Mr. Anderson had his hand up. I'm hoping he's going to make the announcement about the African American Festival, so I'll yield to Mr. Anderson.
Ruben, you only get four mentions during the council meeting. You've had 5.
Yeah, but the cameras are on now.
Any other comments or questions this evening? Mr. Anderson?
I would like to also remind everyone about the a very special time for the Dover, the Delaware League of Cities, and that meeting on this Thursday at 5 and 6, 5 o'clock for the social hour, 6 o'clock. It's going to be a very special one at the Duncan Center, and I can't say why it's special in public, but you can ask me afterwards. And of course, well, now I'll let Mr. Slavin say it. And of course, we have, in between this time, we have 2 premier festivals in the city of Dover. The African American Festival, which is always on the 4th Saturday of the month, which is a great citywide festival that all are invited to experience the Positively Dover experience. And also, of course, Independence Day will be between now and the next council meeting, and we look forward to sharing that time with the community.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Slavin, you have one more.
I just wanted to recognize the work of the clerk's office in conducting the citywide election this past week, and thank Mr. McDowell and all the members of the clerk's office and all the poll workers who came in and made that run as smoothly as it did. Thank you.
These last few weeks have been particularly challenging for the clerk's office and the people in the mayor's office as well. And, you know, after Wednesday night, I'm not going to be your acting mayor. You have a new mayor that's been elected. I will tell you that there's a lot more to being mayor than a lot of you might realize. And you learn a great deal that you didn't realize that you're responsible for. I have had the opportunity to meet with every member of the Dover Police Department, I believe. Is that correct, Chief? I met them at 7 o'clock in the morning on 3 separate mornings so that I could attend all shift changes, and I encouraged them to keep on doing what they're doing, that they have the full support of council, and the police chief has the full support of council, and I as mayor was supportive of them. It's been a very trying time for them. I would also note, and I meant to mention this earlier, former Mayor Carey and his wife were in the audience this evening. They're welcome to come and attend our council meetings anytime that they would like to come and sit in the audience. It is the power of the office to respect, and certainly we're glad to see them this evening. Regardless of what was printed in the newspaper, there's an individual that's contributed 50 years of service to our community, and we move on from this point forward. Bill?
Just to end that, hopefully City Clerk's office does a good job. You all know that. And I will tell you from firsthand experience, they will confirm they like chocolate of all kinds. I take it in there regularly to them, so don't be shy, guys.
They also like flavored coffees. I do know that.
Move for adjournment.
Not yet. Can't adjourn quite yet. I would remind council and members of the public who are watching this evening, there is a special council meeting on Wednesday, the 25th. It's night after tomorrow. We will swear in the new mayor for the city of Dover, Robin Christensen, here in council chambers, and we will hope all of you can make it. Seeing nothing else on the agenda, no further comments, we're adjourned.
Probably.
I don't know.